So welcome everyone. My name is Maba Jonas. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the assistant chaplain here at Johns Hopkins. Today for Time for the Soul, we are going to be hearing about the gift of life, bone marrow registry and donation registry. And so we have a couple of guest speakers here today. Michael Leff is our fellow student here at Hopkins who is going to be sharing some of his experience, as well as Jocelyn Messer, who is from the Gift of Life Foundation. And so I'm going to turn it over to both of you.
So I am Jocelyn Messer. I currently work at Gift of Life as a recruitment specialist, but I also volunteered and was an intern for Gift of Life for 4 years. So let's just get started on what the history of Gift of Life is. There we go. Oh, I think you can click 3 more times. Yeah, there we go. So Gift of Life was founded in 1991 after Jay Feinberg, our CEO and founder, right there in the photo, was diagnosed with leukemia. He was starting his college career. He wanted to be a lawyer, but then he got the diagnosis of leukemia. They tested his family members. None of them were a match for him. The doctors pretty much told him that he had a 5% chance of living and to create his bucket list. But obviously his parents were like, okay, we're not doing that. So they started making all of these drives and events and trying to find Jay's perfect match because a bone marrow transplant was the only way that he would be able to survive. Throughout 4 years, they found a ton of matches for other people, and those people would run drives for him as well. And then after 4 years, 60,000 new donors later, they found his perfect match. So the last person that registered at the last drive was his perfect match, which is so amazing. Since then, he has taken upon himself to dedicate his entire life to the fight against blood cancer and bloodborne illnesses and trying to make sure that everyone can find their match and get the transplant that they need to survive. We're also a part of the Worldwide Marrow Donation Association, and we just had the Worldwide Marrow Donation Day last week, and that was really awesome to see all the different registries come together and just raise awareness on blood cancer and all the things that you can do to sign up and help others get their second chance at life. We can go to the next one. So our mission at Gift of Life is, again, like I said, and Jay's life mission, to find a donor match for everyone that needs one. We can go to the next one. So here are some facts about blood cancer and donations. Every 3 minutes, someone in the US is diagnosed with blood cancer, so it's a very common form of cancer. And every 9 minutes, someone in the US dies from blood cancer, so it's also a very lethal form of cancer. There are more than 37 million donors in the worldwide registry, but we still have so many people that cannot find their match, even though there's so many people on the registry currently. Also, 85% of donors that get called to donate are 18 to 35 years old, so that's why we focus a lot on college campuses. And like Michael, he's an intern for us, focused on Johns Hopkins University, trying to get those age donors to join the registry and potentially save the lives of others. So currently we have more than 370,000 registered donors. So those are people that just swabbed their cheeks and signed up to be on the registry. We've found over 17,000 matches. That just means that they match somebody. It doesn't mean that they are able to donate to them. There's a lot of testing involved to make sure that they are a good match for each other. But we've had over 3,600 marrow transplants. So that's 3,600 lives saved. I think this number is even larger now, but we've had over 19,000 donor drives as a whole within the internship program and community drives and patient run drives. We have more than 2,500 volunteers, and we've conducted donor searches for over 127,000 plus patients. This number is for last year or the year before. This year we have 360 student interns on college campuses nationwide. So I'm really excited to see the swab numbers that we get this year, even with, you know, being in a COVID world. It's really exciting. We serve patients in 49 countries and 6 continents. And we work with 128 hospitals and cancer centers. We actually just celebrated the 1-year anniversary of our apheresis center or donation center here in office. The 1-year anniversary was yesterday. So that was super exciting. We have had almost 200 donations in the office in 1 year. So that was really cool to see as well. So we are also really trying to diversify the registry, since there are a lot of ethnicities that are not represented well within the registry. When looking at a Caucasian person looking for their perfect match, there's a 97-98% chance that they will find their match. But we still have people that can't find their match. You know, it's just such a specific like gene typing and how you find your match. But when we're looking at other ethnicities and races, 75% of African Americans and multiracial individuals cannot find their match. So that means 25% of people are able to find a match with that ethnicity. Asian Pacific Islanders, 60% cannot find a match, and Hispanic Latino, 55% cannot find a match. So those numbers are really, really saddening. And that's why we are really focusing on diversifying the registry and making sure that everyone has an equal chance of finding their life-saving match. So when finding a match, it's based not like blood typing, it's more about genes. So it's not just like A or B or O, positive or negative. It goes a lot deeper than that. So it's based on your genes. Just to show how like unsimilar it is, 1 out of 4 siblings will be a match. And then 3 out of 4 patients will not have a related match. So that means 75% of people need to rely on complete strangers in the registry to be their perfect match. When looking at the match itself, it's based on HLAs. You want to match, we're up to 10 now. It used to be 6 that we looked at, but we've moved it up to 10. 6 out of 10 is technically a perfect match. 5 out of 10 is a partial match. It's not ideal, but we will do it if the patient in need truly needs that match and that transplant. And over to Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but as was mentioned before, of genetics, and you can see here how some standard gene A, B, C, D that you would have from a father and a mother have a chance of being inherited by various children, which is why 75% of people need to rely on an unrelated donor. And as was mentioned before, this is particularly concerning when we have different ethnicities that are underrepresented in the registry, because that means that people can have an incredible amount of difficulty finding a match. So this is sort of the life cycle of what happens after you get your cheek swabbed at whether it's an in-person drive or a virtual drive like this one, and going towards the actual process of donation. To my understanding, around 1 in 430 people, and Jocelyn can certainly correct me if I'm off here, will end up being contacted about a potential match. And then of that, a smaller portion will end up actually going through the donation process. And part of why that is because you need to go through additional testing, you need to go through a physical exam to make sure everybody's healthy. And then, of course, this is an entirely voluntary procedure, and so then different people can choose to go forward with the donation. There is a lot of background stuff that goes into this process. I know I had a ton of people supporting me when I went through the donation process that we'll get to a little bit later. I had people calling me pretty much every day. I had emails. I had lots of information provided. And Gift of Life really was incredible in terms of working me through this whole process. Right. So we sort of summarize the whole process into 5 steps. First, you get cheek swabbed. It's very easy. You can get, in this case, in COVID world, right, you can get the swab sent to you at home, and you can just have your cheek swabbed and then send it directly back to Gift of Life. So it's contactless and safe, which is important. And so you can get your cheek swabbed. Then, as was mentioned before, they'll do testing to see what HLA types you have. And then if there is a patient in need of a match, they'll do a search not only on the Gift of Life database, but on the broader worldwide registry. And then you'll be contacted and called to go through a workup, potential for donation of either blood stem cells or bone marrow. We'll get to what that is a little bit later. And then the actual transplant process. There is follow-up after that where potentially, depending on different privacy laws in different countries and also the willingness of the donor and the recipient, that you can receive updates on how your transplant recipient is doing, and potentially in the future, well, anonymously communicate, and then potentially in the future actually communicate with each other or meet in person. So this is me while I was donating peripheral blood stem cells, which, as you can see here, is the most common type of donation that we do. If anybody's ever donated platelets, it's pretty similar in terms of how the centrifugation and filtration process works. Recovery time is quite fast. I was back to doing not very much because it was COVID, but back to doing whatever I was doing the next day. And even though things were a little bit difficult because at this time, the hospital, I couldn't travel down to Florida to the Gift of Life Center because there were travel restrictions. And I couldn't actually have family members there with me at the hospital because of COVID restrictions. The staff there were still incredibly supportive, and overall, once everything was set up, I sat there reading for a couple hours, and that was that. So for the PBSC donation process, you get the drug Neupogen for 5 days beforehand. In my case, and I believe in many cases, you actually have a nurse come to your home and give you the Neupogen injections, except on the last day when you receive the injection at the hospital. And as a note, whenever I needed to go in for a physical exam or anything, Gift of Life arranged transportation, and they arranged everything. It's really to minimize inconvenience for donors as much as possible so they can potentially save a life. And so then you get the injections after 5 days to ensure the proliferation of those peripheral blood stem cells. And then, as mentioned before, you go through a donation process that's similar to platelet donation. The other 20% of people who don't do PBSC donations actually go through a bone marrow donation, which is what many people are more familiar with. It's an older mechanism of donation, general anesthesia, and you actually go through a surgical process, which is not the case with PBSC donation. And that's primarily requested for young children. But nonetheless, it's also in and out same day. Recovery is pretty fast. It's not something that imposes a high burden on the donor, but has the potential for an incredible impact on the life of the person who receives that transplant. So steps for joining the registry. I apologize, that register code is actually not the right one. The proper registration code is 7566, but you go to giftoflife.org, you put in your registration code, and as I said before, you will get a swab kit sent to you. You can get your swab, you can send it back in, and that's really all it comes down to. At this point, there's no obligation to donate if you get called. There's no really anything besides just getting your HLA type sent into the database to see if you are a match and have the potential to save somebody's life. And in the context of a pandemic, there's not a lot that we can do besides staying home and wearing masks and the like to prevent the spread of COVID or treat those who have COVID. But I think something that we can do more broadly is to make sure that we don't lose our sense of empathy, especially with large numbers that we're hearing these days. 200,000 people have died in the United States. It can seem like a statistic, more than 200,000 actual people. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity to not only preserve this empathy, but help develop this empathy in a way that really is not burdensome for you, but can change somebody's life. Yeah. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to give you more information. I could also provide Jocelyn's information because I just decided to volunteer her. And yeah, thank you very much. And please reach out if you have any questions or if something's not working properly. And also feel free to send this information to friends of yours and others because this really is a very simple, easy way to make a big difference.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm more than welcome to take emails and questions as well. There's just a couple things that I would love to add. I always like to say it's not like, especially the bone marrow donation process, it's not as scary as it seems. It isn't like those scary medical shows like Grey's Anatomy and all that make it look. We have a statistic of like 98% of people would say that they would donate again in a heartbeat if they could. The process really is pretty smooth. Again, Gift of Life tries to make it as easy as possible for the donor. So there's, no reason for them to be like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Like some, constraint of some sort. I also wanted to mention that the process is completely free. You don't get paid to do it, but you will never have to spend money on, again, like he said, transportation. If you do come down to Florida to donate here, you are put in a hotel room. They provide you food. They provide you transportation to and from our headquarters to donate. They literally pamper you while you're here. You fill out like a sheet telling them what you enjoy and what you're into and what food you like, and they will give you all of it. It's actually really, really awesome. And again, even at hospitals, when you're doing the bone marrow donation, everything, I think they just really appreciate that you've gone out of your way to do something like that. And they just try to make it as much of like a great experience for you as possible. And I've always say it's just such a small sacrifice to literally save somebody's life. And I just wish I would get the call that I was a donor. But, fingers crossed. Yeah, thank you again for allowing us to come speak about Gift of Life. Truly have a passion for it. I know Michael does, being a donor. It really means a lot that you allowed us to get the word in our mission out there.
I have a question, if it's okay. I'll introduce myself to those who are listening. I'm Kathy Schnur. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as the chaplain at Johns Hopkins. And Michael, I wanted to know if you would be willing to speak a little bit about how your spiritual or religious convictions have had a role in this experience for you, and if there's anything about that you'd be willing to share.
Absolutely. So I think my spiritual convictions played a very big role in my decision to donate. Right? The idea that everybody is made in the image of God and everybody has value. And so donating was a rather obvious choice because it's an incredible thing to be able to do, and the cost was so minimal. It wasn't even a question of some grand sacrifice I would have to make and decision of, oh, is this worthwhile? Is this something that's going to harm me in the future? It was such a small thing for such an important principle from a religious perspective. And besides the principle, the actual effect it has on the life of the person who receives the transplant, their family, their friends.
Thank you.
Michael, why do you think Hopkins students would be interested in joining the registry?
So Hopkins students, at least from what I've seen, are very engaged in extracurricular activities. You can see people in 5 or 6 different clubs doing whatever it is, but they spend a lot of their time, whether it's in those clubs or other time, volunteering, dealing with issues of social justice, dealing with issues of the environment, dealing with whatever local or international issues that they feel are particularly pressing. And so when an opportunity comes where there's such a minimal investment needed for such an incredible result, I just think it makes a lot of sense.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for being here today and for sharing your stories and for this inspiration. It's wonderful, especially to see that this is something we can do even in this time. You know, not a lot of people are able to get out, but of course we know that people who need this life-saving donation still need this treatment. So I think it's a great opportunity. Is there anything else that you'd like to add or say?
Thank you very much for having us and giving us the opportunity.
Same. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. Hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.